You're listening to a podcast from Dublin's Talking. Downloaded from sunshineradio.ie.
New research by Arthritis Ireland shows non-medical interventions for arthritis, such as scientifically structured self-management programs, can actually help improve patients with arthritis' ability to cope with pain by 50%. Well, Claire Kinneavy joins me on the line. Claire, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Lynn.
You were diagnosed, I believe, with severe rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 24.
That's correct, yeah.
Wow. And how have you managed that?
With difficulty. It's not an easy task, let me tell you, Lindsay, you know. And when I was diagnosed first, I actually had a 6-week-old baby, really. But the first signs came along when I was 4 weeks, just after giving birth to my first child. So, literally the power went out of my hands within days, and I had fleeting joint pains, pains going from one joint to the other, and so much bad that I had difficulty lifting him out of his cot for his feeds and so on,
That must have been shocking. I mean,
Absolutely.
Very, very difficult for you and, of course, the family to deal with a 6-week-old baby. Gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. So, fortunately, my mother had trained as a midwife, and she was there on hand to give me a bit of a hand, because I was actually breastfeeding at the time and needed to come off medication to start on some medications that would actually dampen down the disease, And I was in hospital by the time he was only 10 weeks old, and quite difficult to say goodbye to your little man and, to say goodbye to your husband and sort of realise that you were possibly in for a bit of a shock, So at the time, Lindsay, I would have been told, look, obviously it's rheumatoid you have because it's both sides of the body. You've got widespread pain. The blood markers and everything were showing that it was what they call inflammatory arthritis, So that's a long time ago. This baby is now 29.
Wow.
And, fortunately, I got involved with Arthritis Ireland, as soon as I heard about it, And in fact, when I read about children with arthritis, that's when I decided, oh my God, if I have to give up work or whatever, I really want to devote my life to, voluntary work with a patient organisation. And that's what I ended up doing, in fact, So, fortunately, 10 years after my diagnosis, when I'd already had severe damage done to my hands, I'd already had my elbow replaced by the time I was 35. The Living Well with Arthritis programme, was delivered on a very small scale by the organisation that was formerly Arthritis Foundation, but now Arthritis Ireland. So I would have participated in this same programme 18 years ago and found it really, really helpful, Lindsay. So
tell me, how does one have one's elbows replaced?
Well, with a very skilled surgeon. And obviously you have to be put out for that. It was actually a 5-hour procedure, and I think everybody was beginning to wonder, was I still alive or something? But, it doesn't often take that long, but mine was difficult enough to replace, apparently. But anyway, I mean, I've since had knuckles replaced and whatever. Just so what they do is, they obviously have to excise, take out the old joint, the very badly worn joint, because you don't just lose the cartilage with rheumatoid arthritis. It can actually, destroy bone as well. So they remove that, and then they insert a prosthesis, a shaft up either end of the bones, and a nice new joint. And there are scientists working on developing these prostheses all the time, So,
and then you not only did you have to have your elbows replaced, but your knuckles as well.
Yes, yeah. They had very severely worn, but thankfully in more recent years, in the last 10 years, Lindsay, drugs and medications for rheumatoid and inflammatory arthritis generally, because there's a few different types of inflammatory arthritis, have improved a lot. And so typically, where it really did destroy people's hands and wrists and, gave them very significant disability in the past, people are living a much better quality of life now. And I have a much better quality of life now, So that's helped along by the skills that I learned on the Living Well with Arthritis programme,
So how have things changed since you were first diagnosed all those years ago, Claire?
Well, obviously the the medications, as I've just said, Lindsay. But what's actually really nice is that people in general who have arthritis, and particularly, there are various forms of arthritis, the most common being wear and tear osteoarthritis, which everybody will get if they live long enough, and which may only affect one or two joints. But with widespread inflammatory disease, people are looked after by what we call a multidisciplinary healthcare team. So not only do they see a rheumatologist, but they get to see specialist physiotherapists, nurses, occupational therapists, etc. But of course, depending on where somebody is living or the services in the area, this is something that Arthritis Ireland are trying to promote, and indeed the chairman of Arthritis Ireland is working hard with the HSE to try and develop nice pathways of care for people to go along, and ideally where people live, they're able to access physiotherapy and occupational therapists and whatever, and there's great connection between hospital and local health clinics and whatever on the management of it, because medicines need to be monitored, etc., etc. So, but really what people can do for themselves is terribly important, Lindsay, and that's really what this Living Well with Arthritis programme is about. It's a 15-hour programme that teaches somebody the importance of being at the centre of all of that management that I've just talked about,
Indeed.
And so it's about presenting yourself and being informed about, your x-rays and your blood tests and all of the different treatments that are necessary, and taking a very proactive role,
And of course, the concept of self-managing this kind of pain and this disease has been gaining popularity in Europe and the States over the last few years.
That's right. Apparently, even prior to the development of this program, which started in 1979 in California, there was one professor who died actually fairly recently, because I know through the contacts that we have with Stanford University in relation to this particular program that we got an email saying that, we're paying tribute to this gentleman who in fact was working with another chronic disease. I think it was a lung disease. Some eminent professor in the States had first suggested this idea of self-management, but the specific program to teach people how to manage their arthritis, which started in Stanford University in California in 1979, was so successful in working with people with arthritis that they actually developed a chronic disease self-management program then, which is actually useful for all types of conditions, whether it be heart disease or diabetes or whatever. So people don't possibly realise, and very often we kind of leave it to the doctors, leave it to the healthcare team, but really what this message really through self-management is by saying, look, be involved and understand, your condition. It's your condition, and if you understand it, it'll make a big difference to your quality of life, and you'll be able to enjoy your everyday again by knowing how to manage it and sort of making it a bit of a backseat passenger in your life instead of interfering all the time,
Absolutely. And I suppose some startling facts are that arthritis actually affects 1 in 5 people in this country. That's 915,000 people nationwide. That's
right. And what you're talking about there, Lindsay, as well, is, a wide age range, while predominantly osteoarthritis is the most common, that would affect mostly the older age groups. But indeed, our young sportsmen and people who've had accidents or whatever may develop osteoarthritis at a young age in joints which, maybe haven't set back properly or where there's been a lot of wear and tear or something. But overall, though, there are, a significant number of children, with inflammatory arthritis, children as young as 11 months, maybe even being diagnosed with widespread chronic pain and a systemic disease, which, is difficult enough to manage, but needs to be looked after extremely quickly,
But at 11 months old, God, that's fairly harsh. Tell me about the Living Well with Arthritis courses. When are they happening?
Well, the ones, I suppose, which are relevant to your listeners, Lindsay, in the Dublin area, there are 3 locations in Dublin, and they're all happening in October. But, people who are members of Arthritis Ireland or who are friends of Arthritis Ireland and stay in contact contact with us regularly through Facebook or whatever, you know, they may already have registered for this program, you know, and the program is actually taking place, you know, in Dublin city centre for people between the ages of 18 and 35, and that's in October, and it's an evening program. In Terranure in October as well, another evening program, and that's for all age groups. And in Artane in an afternoon, some afternoons in October in Artane. That's the location, you know. But generally, some of the programs actually down the country, we've about 14 locations. Some of them are actually starting next week even, you know. And so people meet in a workshop situation for 2.5 hours every week, just for 6 sessions. And really that time flies, and there's about 18 people in each group. It's not a support group per se, but people meet every week, and there's a lovely textbook that actually goes with this. It's called the Arthritis Health Book, and it's a very useful resource book. And in fact, we all, as leaders, we always encourage people to hold on to that book, you know. So the course and the program is delivered by people who are trained to do that, but who usually have arthritis or are maybe health professionals working with people with arthritis already. There's 2 leaders on the program, you know. Okay, so if people want more information, is there an email address or that they can access? Yeah, well, if they check on the www.arthritisireland.ie, if they check on that website under support programs, they will see the locations if they go down the page. Some of them maybe are booked out, but over the weekend people would have been maybe sending in emails. There is actually a booking form online for people. Otherwise they can telephone the Dublin number, and it's 01 647 0206. Okay. Now, don't be disappointed if they are booked out already, because what it means is that somebody may be put on a waiting list for that particular programme, or that maybe in the springtime when we run the programmes again. It's usually twice a year that we run these. They're funded, we get some funding from the HSE for these, you know. Okay, so all the information is there on that website. Just give it to us again there, Claire. So the website is www.arthritisireland, all one word, .ie. Excellent stuff. And the contact number for Dublin? 01 647 0206. Listen, a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing so well. It's such a terrible thing to be struck down with when you're so young, and you know you've a 6-week-old baby, but you're living proof that you've come through this and you can manage it. Well, Lindsay, I cheat. I tell people I'm cheating because I still lead the programme, and so I'm in the workshop every time. So in other words, I've done the programme over and over again for the last 18 years. So I tell people I'm cheating. So staying involved with Arthritis Ireland has helped me an awful lot, you know, but obviously I'm practicing really what's taught in the programme about being proactive, you know. And you're cheating very well. Thank you. Thank you. Claire, a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Lindsay. You take care. Good morning. Good morning. That is Claire Kinneavy, and she was diagnosed with severe rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 24. She was so badly affected by it that she had to get her elbow and knuckles replaced. I can't even imagine how you go about doing something like that.